Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer, this is Sasha. Spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but have been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get put in prison. I've also got a lot of stories about the crazy stuff that happened when I was actually in prison. And God forbid you end up in prison, you want to make some of the same mistakes I made. The first picture I ever saw of my great-granddad was in front of a moonshine still, sitting with his buddies. Sitting there in a picture, shotgun propped up beside of him, and in front of it, black and white photo. And I heard a good many stories about him. It sounded like he was an alcoholic, he had his issues. Sounds like at the end he got off of it though. But he was an alcoholic, he was a moonshiner. Franklin County, Virginia is the moonshine capital of the world. That's been said many times. The show Moonshiners, which I think is mostly fake, but some that's in Franklin County. And this is Virginia, Southwest Virginia, down the corner, Garden Creek, which is near Grundy. He was known to use the ditch along the side of the road, kind of like, when you go to theme parks and you got like a little car that goes along the tracks. He would put his two wheels in the ditch and use that to guide him home, which is terrible, terribly dangerous, terribly irresponsible. And there are plenty of stories about him, being mean when he was on it. There was a story about him being at a stoplight, passed out, and a guy on a motorcycle hit the back of his car, flew over the car, landed on the hood. Well, that prompted him to wake up. He woke up, jumped out of the car, said, "What the F are you doing on my GD car?" Popped him in the face, threw him off, and took off on his way. The guys at the fire station at the end of Garden Creek, that was a story that got told. There's other stories about him getting told, passed out, scooped up, drove back home, and dropped off in the lawn, and he passed out. And, it said something about, I believe they said you could see the moonshine still from outside the house. But alcoholic, and it's a genetic predisposition. At hospitals, they will ask this. And it's something you need to know, what it's like in your family. If it's something that's prevalent in your family, because it's something that could save you a whole lot of grief and a laundry list of awful problems like I had to deal with. With my addiction, some people are genetically predisposed to having issues. It's how it is. For instance, side of the family, there's issues with that. I have a family member. I won't say who it is because it probably upset people, but they waited until they were retired, until they were a senior citizen, to start drinking. Now they're a full-blown alcoholic. Unfortunately, because alcohol is legal and more widely accepted, it gets swept under the rug. It gets less talked about. This person gets drunk and they'll make phone calls to people. Terrible phone calls saying things they shouldn't say, being mean, don't remember it the next day. And it's an issue. It's sad. And if everybody got together and treated it, if it was drugs they were on, of course, everybody would rally and, do something about it. But because it's alcohol, something that's legal, it's more widely accepted and, just being let go. And it's really sad. It's really sad because this is awful. This person's not living their life. This person was so lively, fun, and everything else, and now when you see them, you have to watch out for them to fall over and hurt themselves. You have to watch for them to fall over on you. There's an incident with that happened. But anyway, it sucks. It sucks to see. It sucks to watch, knowing that they have a problem, knowing that they're not accepting it, knowing that everybody else is in denial about it, and that I know this much about addiction, and alcohol is a drug. Alcohol does far more harm than so many other, substances. It does. It does worse than most drugs do. Okay? Some of the things that people do, like opiates, it won't do anything to you until it takes you out. There are people that do that until they're good and old. Can't do that today. Not anymore. Times have changed. It's no longer what it used to be. And even then it was still dangerous. It wasn't smart and it wasn't safe then. But, it's something that there is. I met a man in prison who'd done it since he was 9 years old. He was about 70, old Serrano. And, he wasn't going to quit doing it. And he was in reasonable health. He showed back up to the prison 3 times while I was there. He left and went back and didn't even realize he was gone. But when he showed up the last time, he had a big old beard and he was always clean shaved. He looked rough. Then he'd get cleaned up and he'd do it again. But alcohol is a tremendously terrible thing. Genetic predisposition is something people need to know. Now, I used to think genetic predisposition was a bunch of BS until I started seeing stuff, not only with my own family, but just different things and different habits. Certain things that I like that I had no clue that people liked that I ended up liking. Like fighting. My great-granddad on my dad's side, apparently he was a preacher and a bare-knuckle boxer. He'd have a black eye and go in there and preach, And there's also, there's issues on both sides of the family, with alcoholism. So I'm definitely, had double whammy on that. And my granddad, on my mom's side, he was not a drinker, wasn't a user, anything like that. A lot of people, he was a fighter though, when he had to, from the time he was a kid. He was really good at throwing rocks. There's a story I'll tell another day, but when he threw a rock, busted a guy. His brother came, he threw another rock, busted him. Then the dad came and he asked him if he wanted something too, and the dad just turned and walked away. But he worked as highway, like basically VDOT, which is like just highway. He wasn't a patrolman, but he worked on the roads. And part of that was he'd watch after prisoners. And he was known for being tough, but being good. He actually made friends with the prisoners. One of them came to his house after he got out and scared my grandma. Giant man, burly, behemoth of a man. And there's a story I'll tell about him another day that tripped my mom out, tripped me out. He told because my granddad became friends with these guys who he'd watch who were inmates. It makes me feel good because I have another family member who's married into the family that, God, he told a story that pissed me off. And it was when I was on bond before I went into prison. I heard this guy worked in a prison. There was a guy, he was transporting him to the hospital, and he said, "I'm telling you, boss, I've got meningitis. I've had it before." And he said, "Shut up. I'm not one. Just shut up." He said he was hungover or something. And he says, "I'm telling you, boss." And he talked about how he told him to shut up because he was hungover. And the story ended, well, he died. Turns out he had meningitis. And I thought, wouldn't tell that story to anybody. You sound like a really terrible person. Made me not like him, among other things. But to hear my granddad was good to people, I believe in treating people good. You'll never ever hear a story of me being rude to a waiter, waitress, or anybody who works as an attendant at a gas station, stuff like that. And I don't put up with people like that. I've walked out of restaurants for them. Mom's got this friend from New Jersey who was very rude to somebody, and I got up and walked. Don't mess with people that make your food. I know it's a little bit of a side note. But there was a guy that picked my granddad up, an inmate, when he worked on, when he had to watch him as they did the work on the roads. Said, "What are you going to do, little man?" He said, "You better put me down." He said, "What are you going to do?" And he was known to not play. He didn't play. He was a good man. Like I said, the guy came to us, that big burly man that was a prisoner, got out, came to his house. He made friends with these people, but he didn't play. And he grabbed that guy's berries down low, and it sounds like he ruptured one. The guy had to go to the hospital. That was a story that my uncle told me that I thought was interesting. The one story about the guy that got out and came to the house told him, there's another story with that, but he told him that he was set up, and told him the whole story about the judge and everything, and said he lost everything, had nothing else to lose, and he was going to get his get back. By chance, my mom happened to be at a church years later, and she met this man who was a retired judge who was disfigured and walking wrong and stuff like that. Something that happened to him. It was the same judge as this guy's case, and this guy swore he was going to get some type of revenge. Tripped my mom out, trips my family out. Wonder if it was that guy. That's another thing. But yeah, like I said, the fighting thing, it's something just love, obsessed with. Maybe it might be genetic, anything else. Granddad was a moonshiner. Great granddad was a moonshiner. I ended up being a dealer. I'm sure they growing stuff all over them mountains too. That was a big thing back then. Look where it got me. Lost my 20s to federal prison. Didn't work out too well. But the whole genetic predisposition thing is something that should be looked into a whole lot more, because you could save yourself some grief. If I try this, there's a risk that something bad could happen. My mom, I swear on everything, she's an addict. She just never used drugs. She never even smoked weed. When she found my weed, she thought I had some type of new super drug. She said it looks like broccoli. She thought it was going to look like shredded up parsley. She'd never seen it before. She'd never done it, But just some of the behaviors, some of the things, some of the obsessive compulsive things. Addiction's a disease of obsession and compulsion. Obsession's the nagging, lingering thought that never leaves your mind, that haunts you all day. And the compulsion is, of course, using it, but it's also the going out and stealing, the selling, middlemaning to get it. It's doing illegal things to get the thing you want. That's the compulsion part. Doing things you normally would never do. You will see people, good people, that are addicts, that do things you would never in a million years believe they would do, that I would never do. I never would have imagined that I'd do. I never imagined that I'd steal, rob, or sell drugs when I was, a kid. But it's what ended up happening. It does bring out the worst in people, and something you have to tell yourself is, it's not an excuse for what people do. But I've forgiven people. I've got a friend that, from I understand, I still don't know the whole story. It sounds like mom had employed him, and that he ended up knowing when my mom was out of town, and he had key to the house, and he stole a lot of stuff from my mom. I've forgiven him. Of course, he's never going to work at my mom's house, or anything like that again. But I realize that's what addiction does to you. I'm not going to sit here and be mad about it. It was easy. He had access to certain things. Oftentimes, addicts steal what's convenient. It's messed up. It's how it works, though. It's what's easiest to get and be gone and be done with. And, I forgive that. Of course, there are certain things it's not opening the door to let it happen again. Screw me once, shame on you. Screw me twice. That type of deal. But you learn from it, you do it, but, don't hold certain grudges to it. But anyway, got some interesting stories about the family and stuff like that, but it really does suck when you got a family member that's an alcoholic specifically. There's a number of alcoholics that I know that it's not looked at the same. And ironically, those are usually the people that turn their nose up at addicts and talk about addicts and criticize and demonize them. They're alcoholics. Of course, there's probably a self-loathing aspect to it, a self-hatred type of deal. But, you're also an addict. If you're an alcoholic, it's legal, yes. But, let's break it down. Let's be real about it. Let's not kid ourselves. It's the same thing, and it's actually worse in a lot of ways, okay? I've done a lot of different substances, a lot of different things. I've done most of them, being real. The one that is about most dangerous to drive on is alcohol. It is. There are so many people that are lost on a yearly basis, and it's just not looked at as it should be because it's legal. And you talk about the legalities of things. A lot of the reason things that are illegal in this country are for reasons you would not even guess. Marijuana was made illegal because a lot of the Mexicans like to smoke it, so they made it illegal. It's literally, this is actual written record, this isn't speculation, to drive them out, the illegals out. With the Chinese immigrants, they made the opium den illegal. Not opium, they allowed opium to be legal, but the opium den, which was known as a cultural hangout for Chinese immigrants. They made the opium den illegal. Opium was legal, but the den was made illegal to get rid of Chinese immigrants. So a lot of the legalities, illegal, legal type stuff, when you really look at it and break it down, it's weird how we deem certain things acceptable and certain other things unacceptable. Doesn't make, one more right or one more wrong than another. Of course, opiates are the ones that are more wrong than any other right now because people aren't getting what they think they're getting, and with the counterfeit, counterfeit prescription pills that they are producing, fentanyl in them, along with fentanyl being put in heroin, which it's a problem. So that's one that, it's a whole other thing. Of course, they're making counterfeits of everything. It's been noted that a lot of the black market stimulant medications that they have are speeds being put in them, but that's not taking people out, so it's not getting as much notice. But anyway, just a little bit of speculation, on genetic predisposition. It's something that, given a lot of consideration and thought to. I used to think was BS, but now I've given a second thought due to obvious things, Great granddad being a bare knuckle boxer, I end up being obsessed with fighting, then also another one being a moonshiner, and end up being a dealer. I actually made a good bit of moonshine myself, and the alcoholism, addiction, and just that being in the family, and it's like I said, my mom, she shows traits of an addict, but she's never used, never used. So there's a thing, some people have that in them, but they never do it. And if they never do it, they never have to go down that road. And if you know that you're predisposed to it and you make the choice not to do it, you can save yourself a whole lot of grief. So anyway, if you like the video, press the like button. If not, that's 16 minutes and 14 seconds of your life in which you'll never get back. But I hope you did. Y'all have a good one.